The Forest of Vanishing Shadows. There is a place deep in the wilderness that no maps dare to mark. Locals call it the Hollow Vale, a cursed stretch of forest where countless people have disappeared over centuries. They say the forest breathes, and within its dense foliage, shadows stretch far longer than they should. Those who wander too deep are lost, not just in space, but in time, vanishing as if they never existed at all. Few dare to venture near, and those who do return, different if they return at all. It begins on a cloudy autumn evening. Ethan, Maya, and Josh, three college friends, set out to camp near the forest for a weekend adventure. Maya found the place while scrolling through obscure travel forums, intrigued by cryptic posts that spoke of mysterious phenomena in Hollow Vale. Ethan, always up for a thrill, was more interested in proving that the forest was just an old wives' tale. Josh, skeptical but eager to support his friends, reluctantly joined. Armed with tents, cameras, and flashlights, they arrive at the forest's edge. Despite the eerie silence that blankets the area, Ethan reassures the group. "It's just a bunch of trees," he says with a laugh. But Maya feels uneasy. The air is thick, as if the forest is holding its breath. The trio hikes deeper into the forest, unaware that the trail they follow seems to shift behind them, as if the forest itself is rearranging. Shadows move where no wind blows. As night falls, they make camp in a small clearing. But sleep comes hard. Maya keeps hearing faint murmurs, almost like voices whispering her name. She convinces herself it's the wind, but deep down, she knows it's something more. At midnight, Josh wakes with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. He steps out of the tent and notices something strange. The forest feels too quiet, as though every living creature has fled. Then, in the corner of his eye, he catches movement, a shadow slipping between the trees. When he focuses on it, there's nothing. Just as Josh turns back, he hears a voice behind him. "Don't look back. Keep walking." He spins around, but there's no one there. Just the trees, dark and silent. He rushes back to the tent, too frightened to tell the others what he saw. By morning, the forest feels different. Heavier, as if the air itself is closing in. The compass spins uselessly in Ethan's hand. "I think we're lost," Maya whispers. Ethan brushes it off with a nervous chuckle, but even he feels the growing dread gnawing at the edges of his mind. They walk in what they believe is the direction of the road, but no matter how far they go, they keep ending up at the same twisted tree with blackened roots. Ethan, frustrated, throws his backpack down. "This forest is messing with us." Maya suddenly notices that the shadows seem thicker around the tree, and they pulse as if alive. Then, without warning, Josh vanishes. One moment he's standing beside them. The next, he's gone. No sound, no struggle, just gone. Maya screams, calling his name. Ethan searches frantically, but there's no trace of their friend. Only the forest, growing darker with every passing minute. Desperation sets in. Maya insists they keep moving, but the whispers grow louder, now unmistakable. They speak in Josh's voice. "Come this way. I found a way out." Ethan knows it's a trap, but Maya is too distraught to think clearly. "We have to follow it," she cries. Ethan grabs her arm. "That's not him." But Maya shakes him off and runs toward the voice. Ethan curses under his breath and follows her. The deeper they go, the stranger the forest becomes. The trees seem to sway without wind, their bark marked with cryptic symbols. And then they see it, a blackened grove at the forest's center, filled with twisted leafless trees. In the middle of the grove stands a figure, motionless. Josh. Maya rushes toward him, but Ethan holds her back. "Look at his face," Ethan whispers. Josh stands perfectly still, his eyes vacant, his skin pale as if drained of life. Then, in a hollow voice, Josh says, "You shouldn't have come." Suddenly, the forest erupts with whispers, thousands of voices blending together, each one pleading, warning, calling. The shadows around the grove ripple, forming shapes, people. Ethan and Maya realize with horror that these are the lost souls of Hollow Vale, trapped between worlds. The ground beneath their feet shifts, revealing an ancient stone archway, half buried in the earth. Inscribed on it are the words, "Those who enter shall not return, for the forest keeps what it takes." Josh steps toward the archway, his movements jerky and unnatural. "It's the only way," he whispers, his voice devoid of emotion. Ethan pulls Maya back, but the shadows surge toward them, dragging them closer to the arch. Ethan knows they only have seconds to act. He pulls Maya away from the shadows, shouting, "We have to leave him. That's not Josh anymore." But Maya hesitates. What if some part of him is still in there? The shadows close in, their whispers relentless. Maya makes a decision. She pulls Ethan toward the archway. "If we go through, we might get out," she says. Ethan looks at her, knowing there's no guarantee. But there's no time to argue. Together, they step through the stone archway. For a moment, there is nothing but darkness. When Ethan and Maya open their eyes, they find themselves standing at the edge of the forest, disoriented and exhausted. The sun is rising, and the forest behind them looks normal. There's no sign of the twisted trees, the grove, or the stone archway. Maya collapses to the ground, sobbing. "We left him," she whispers. "We left him behind." Ethan wraps his arms around her, trying to steady his own shaking hands. But as they turn to leave, Ethan notices something odd, his shadow. It stretches longer than it should, flickering at the edges. And then, just for a second, he sees Josh's face reflected in the shadow, grinning. The forest isn't done with them yet. Weeks later, locals report strange occurrences at the forest's edge. Footsteps without bodies, whispers in the wind, and shadows that move on their own. Some say they've seen two figures standing at the tree line, a boy and a girl, watching, waiting. The legend of Hollow Vale grows, warning all who listen. The forest always takes what it's owed. Maya and Ethan tried to return to their normal lives, but something from the forest had followed them. It started small, objects moving without reason, whispers brushing past their ears when no one was around. At night, Maya dreamed of Josh standing just beyond her reach, calling her name. Ethan saw flickers of shadows in mirrors and reflections, shadows that smiled with Josh's face. One evening, Ethan noticed that the strange symbols they saw on the trees had begun appearing on the walls of his apartment, faint but unmistakable. Maya's phone glitched often, with recordings she never took playing back eerie, distorted voices. One night, as she tried to sleep, her phone buzzed. Missed call, Josh. Terrified, Maya blocked the number, but the calls persisted, always from Josh, always at midnight. Ethan decided to return to Hollow Vale to end whatever curse had followed them. He tried to convince Maya to stay behind, but she refused. "If we don't stop this now, it'll never leave us," she said. They returned to the forest, desperate to sever the connection before it consumed them. When they reached the edge of the forest, everything looked the same as before. The ancient trees, the unnerving silence. But something had changed. The archway that led to the cursed grove was now gone. Instead, symbols, those same strange markings, were burned into the bark of every tree around them. They weren't welcome anymore. The forest knew they had escaped, and it was angry. As they ventured deeper, the forest shifted again, rearranging the paths. Maya and Ethan found themselves walking in circles. They tried leaving breadcrumbs and marking trees, but every time they returned, the markings were gone, as if the forest had swallowed their trail. They were trapped in a maze that obeyed no rules. At sunset, the familiar whispers returned, louder and more distinct. "Come back, they urged. "We need you." Josh's voice was clearer than ever, accompanied by others, voices of people who had disappeared into the forest over the years. Ethan clutched Maya's hand tightly. "It's trying to break us," he whispered. Maya nodded, fighting the growing urge to answer the whispers, to follow them into the depths of the forest where Josh's shadow seemed to flicker between the trees. She knew they were running out of time. The forest wasn't just alive, it was hunting them, and it wanted them back. Just before midnight, they stumbled into a clearing. The blackened grove had returned, but now the stone archway was complete, glowing faintly in the dark. Ethan and Maya could feel a powerful pull, as though the archway was calling them to step through. On the other side, they could see Josh, standing perfectly still, waiting. Josh's face was cold, his eyes empty, but his shadow moved on its own, stretching and twisting unnaturally behind him. He spoke, his voice calm and distant. "You can't leave this time. The forest doesn't forgive. It always takes what it's owed." Ethan knew they had a choice. Either step through the archway and join the lost souls of the forest forever, or find another way to break the curse. Maya knelt by the archway, noticing something carved at its base. One life for another. It was the answer, the only way out. The forest demanded a trade. One of them had to stay behind for the other to escape. Tears welled in Maya's eyes as she looked at Ethan. "We can't both make it," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "There has to be another way." But the shadows closed in, and they knew they were out of time. Josh smiled from the other side of the archway. "Choose," he whispered. In a flash of determination, Ethan grabbed Maya and pushed her through the archway. "Go!" he shouted as the shadows surged toward him. Maya screamed, trying to pull him with her, but the archway flickered, and then Ethan was gone. Maya collapsed on the other side, gasping for breath. The forest behind her sealed itself, the archway disappearing into the mist. She was free, but Ethan was lost, trapped in the forest's endless labyrinth with Josh and the other shadows. Months passed. Maya tried to move on, but the guilt weighed heavily on her. She knew Ethan had saved her. But at what cost? The whispers were gone, the curse lifted, for now. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the forest wasn't done with her. One night, as she drifted off to sleep, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new message flashed on the screen. "I'm still here, Maya. The forest never forgets." And just like that, she knew. The forest hadn't let Ethan go. It was still waiting, still hungry. And one day, it would come back for her.